At least going north, I would say that one.
Alrighty. Does this mean we are ready to go?
All right.
Okay, Terry, are we ready?
I believe we are.
Okay, I'd like to call the workshop of Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District for the month of November to order. We are sorry that we had a little technical difficulty there for the first few minutes, but we appear to be up and ready to roll. So, who would like to start?
Patterson, manager. So we have talked about this a few times in the past about the North Lotus Lake Stormwater Park. Talked about the road projects that Chanhassen has coming up in the area. And we've talked about trying to combine the two into one thing so that Chanhassen can get stormwater credit from the project that we're doing through some type of fee for credit type of, which would, that will be worked out throughout the agreement process. Now, the issue is that the way our rules are written would not necessarily allow for something like this. But in conversations that we have had as a body in the past, we have recognized that sometimes our regulatory program might interfere with doing the best thing at that time or for the project that's in. So what we would like to do is bring forward to you kind of the, I've asked Chanhassen to come in and bring forward the road project that they have. And really we're looking for if the managers are okay with this process that we're proposing to do. And that process would be that they would start the project prior to us starting the North Lotus Lake Park project. And then we would work out an agreement with Chanhassen that would allow them to use those credits. So we'd in essence have two agreements. The first one would be that, yes, we agree to utilize the park. And then the second agreement would be how that would actually look, the maintenance, how the payment would look, everything else. That's probably it. Scott, anything you think is germane before we turn it over to Chanhassen at this time?
I think we're good.
So we're not voting on anything. This is still just.
We're not voting on anything tonight. We're just kind of looking for just a general consensus from the board of, yeah, I think that's a way to move forward, or, oh, no, we're not going to do this. We have Joe Seidel and Charles Howley from the city. Joe is a water resources engineer. Charles Howley is public works director and city engineer. You've met them both before, but with that, I'll turn it over to Chanhassen Brents.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, everyone. Madam President, board managers, thank you for this opportunity today to go over this 2026 city pavement rehabilitation project and this North Lotus Lake Regional BMP to have a discussion and get feedback from you all on how we would like to proceed. We've had a lot of conversations at a staff level, I like to say, between Charlie, myself, Scott, Terry, and the designers for the project, for the street project that the city has. And we've progressed to a point where really we need feedback and direction to move forward. And that's where we're looking at you as the decision makers to help provide that feedback so that we're on the right path.
That's not my problem.
That's my problem. So, again, why are we here? So, city staff is looking for that direction on how to proceed as it relates to the permitting for the 2601 pavement rehabilitation project. To frame that up a little bit more, that the 2601 project, we're looking at a full reconstruction of neighborhoods in the Fox Hollow area of Chanhassen, which is located adjacent to North Lotus Lake Park. And that's, thank you, located at the northeast corner of Chanhassen and up gradient of Lotus Lake. there is the North Lotus Lake Regional BMP project, which is programmed, I think, for 2027 or maybe 2028. Scott or Terry, correct me if I'm wrong. There's a possibility that we might be competing for some of the same locations to place stormwater infrastructure. But I actually look at this, and the city looks at this as an opportunity for us to join forces and do more with the resources we have. In looking at accomplishing that goal, a variance or some sort of exception from the rules or from your rules might be needed, which is one of the main reasons we're here today, because we don't want to surprise you with our permit application with a variance. We want to get ahead of that and have that conversation early and again, get that direction from you all. A brief overview of the 2601 project. So again, we're looking at reconstructing this Fox Hollow neighborhood. Framing this a little bit in more detail, we've got Pleasant View Road to the north, we've got Highway 101 to the east, and then we're bound by the North Lotus Lake Park to the west of the project area. This area was built out in the 1980s. There's pretty minimal stormwater infrastructure. It was designed for smaller events than we designed for today, and there's really minimal storm sewer and minimal existing stormwater drainage that exists out there. It does not meet current stormwater treatment standards, and there's known flooding issues specifically at this pond right here. It's named 1P in the diagram. And those are issues that we're looking to solve with the reconstruction project. A brief overview of the design of what we're looking to do is, again, this is a full depth reconstruction of the Fox Hollow neighborhood. There'd be about 5 acres of reconstructed impervious and really minimal new impervious area. Since we're reconstructing a neighborhood, we're not really widening roads or things of that nature. It's really, again, the reconstruction of that existing impervious area. But in doing so, that's still going to be triggering rules and regulations, not only by you guys, but the city of Chanhassen. And again, this is an opportunity to kind of correct those problems from the past and get this up to current standards. As part of this, we're actually looking at solving the flooding issue of the stormwater pond located in this area here through a redirection of storm sewer along Fox Hollow. So this red area here is indicating an opportunity to reroute a pretty significant amount of drainage area back into some sort of regional stormwater facility, and in doing so, you relieve this area of that stress caused by that drainage area. If we are looking at this with our blinders on, right, in the cities, we're just trying to do our own project, we are very likely building some sort of stormwater infrastructure right in this area here. And that, again, is in direct conflict with the area that we're looking at using for the North Lotus Lake Regional BMP project that you guys had scoped out previously. The timeline for the project is we're currently completing preliminary design, moving into final design, looking at finalizing plans early winter, bidding, targeting probably February, maybe even March, opening up for bids to do construction this spring, probably starting as soon as May 1st. And then it would be a full season of construction, ending with substantial completion probably around November, and then restoration would happen. Usually it bleeds into the next year when we're putting everything back together. So it'd be like finalizing, planting, and confirming that like lawns and landscapings and things of that nature are all done correctly.
Can you define correctly?
Correctly?
Looking for
well, we
green
have engineers
infrastructure,
standards
Joe.
for that. Well, I would say in that scenario, though, we have our residents, right? And they have a relatively high expectation that we're looking to meet.
So making sure that they are happy with how things are put back together, and what the restoration of their yards looks like. Very high level, the North Lotus Lake Regional BMP project, again, identified opportunity as part of the Lotus Lake Water Quality Improvement Study. It's a large regional facility plan for the area, and it's a really cool opportunity because we can actually use this as a vehicle to have our public interact with a stormwater best management practice and actually provide a learning experience. So one of the things that I'm most excited about this is we're not hiding away the stormwater facility. It's going to be in the open area in a park, and we're actually designing it such that it's an amenity. And when we have an amenity, we've got walking paths and things of that nature. It's an opportunity for us to have signage and things of that nature to explain to our residents what this is, why it's important, and why stormwater management is important. That project, again, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, is in the preliminary design phase?
Not quite.
Not quite? Okay, getting there?
Concept are there.
Concept? Okay, sure. And has not been ordered or authorized by the Watershed District Board. And again, the anticipated construction is sometime in that 2027, maybe 2028 period of time. That brings us to stormwater management options. So again, the city, we've got this project coming up, and I kind of see this as we can go small or we can go big. We can look at our own project needs. We can complete what we need to do for our project. We can meet your rules and regulations, but we're not maximizing the area. We're not maximizing the stormwater treatment that could be utilized in that park, and we might not be able to do all those other things that we want to do. The other option that we have, and the city's preferred option, is to partner with the Watershed District, build big things, and provide the maximum benefit to the resource in the area that we can. But again, doing so is likely going to require some sort of variance and exception from your rules, just because of how they're written. At a very high level, how that preferred option would work would be that the facility would be built bigger, as big as it can be, and bigger than it would be needed to meet solely the city project needs. It would optimize treatment and benefit to the resource. The Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District and the BAR design team would design and build that BMP, and that BMP would later be turned over to the city to own and maintain. The city would pay the district back as projects are constructed that would need those credits. So we would work with your staff to figure out what a fair dollar value is for those stormwater treatment credits, and we would pay you for those as those projects come up. The two immediate project needs would be, again, that Fox Hollow, the 2601 reconstruction project, and then we're also looking at reconstructing the Pleasant View Road, which is happening around 2027 to 2027 or 2028. Those will both trigger stormwater treatment needs, and where this is an opportunity for us to use this BMP as part of the treatment. A temporary BMP could be constructed in this area to offset some of the construction and have some treatment in that interim condition before that regional system was completed. I would note this isn't like we're creating a whole bunch of new impervious surface. It's reconstructed, so it really wouldn't be that much different than what is out there today, but that is something that we're happy to talk about and happy to do. We see that as kind of an improvement over that existing condition. And again, we'd be looking at some sort of joint powers agreement to set up the framework for this solution that we are proposing. In talking to Terry, our understanding is that you guys would as part of this, would like some update on what's going on with the civic campus and the regional BMP that we're implementing as part of that solution. Bringing you back, oh man, I want to say it's probably 2 years ago, we had a very similar conversation with you all. We had a need to treat stormwater as part of the civic campus build out and a couple of projects in that area, which was the 2401 street reconstruction along with Market Boulevard. And what the city worked with you guys to do is combine the stormwater treatment of those projects, do something that was bigger than any of those projects could do on their own. And in doing so, we are building a facility that is going to reuse water from an existing stormwater pond to irrigate all the ball fields and all the areas around the civic campus. So that's something we're committed to doing. That project has started we have started the construction. So there's a large cistern or holding area for that reuse stormwater that's currently in the ground. And it was built out with phase 1 of the civic campus build out. And phase 1 is kind of the building and all the kind of the areas around the building. Phase 2 is going to be completed in 2026. We're looking at opening everything up for our 4th of July celebrations. Our permit agreement with you guys for that project is that we need to get that system operational before the end of 2026, which we are committed to doing. There was some change in direction from our city council on how they wanted to build out the marketplace or Market Boulevard roadway project. So what Charlie and I looked at doing was actually separating out the stormwater portion of that so we could move forward with that portion so that we can confirm that we're going to meet, our permitting requirements. I wish that we were asking for forgiveness of the rules or having this discussion a year from now so that we could have proof that, Chanhassen makes good on our promises. At this point, I can only say that is our intent. We're moving forward and doing everything that we can to make sure that we're meeting those permit requirements. And we're really excited about having a big regional BMP system that's going to do a whole lot of good for this area and save a whole bunch of water that would otherwise be used through irrigation from our public system. So a really, really cool project and really appreciate that you guys were able to work with us to find that solution. A little bit on like the current civic campus building. It is done. I would say mostly there, if you came in today, you would see, a couple of things getting buttoned up. They're finishing up drywall. There's always, little ends that they're, trying to fix and get everything done, but it is substantially complete. Just last week, they were installing solar panels on the roof. So another really cool thing that happened was we were able to secure a grant for that. So there's going to be 110 solar panels that are going to generate 70,000 kilowatt hours of energy, clean energy per year that we're going to be able to use. So that's going to offset, I think it's 25% of the building's energy. Again, that cistern system is installed and we're looking at this summer for construction of the rest of the reuse system so that we can meet that requirement. And I guess with that, I'd move on to closing, which is, again, our primary goals here are to manage stormwater and improve local water quality. That's why I got into water resources engineering. But as part of that, we also have these street projects that we need to complete and we need to secure permits for. We, the city, we're looking at being as transparent as possible. No one likes variances. I often actually get to sit on the other side of the table and review variances from our residents in Chanhassens, and a lot of times it's frustrating. I say, why can't you just meet the rules, right? So I totally understand how how that might look, but I think if we are not looking at a variance in this situation, or not looking at doing that regional facility at North Lotus Lake Park and combining our projects to make that as big of a project as we can, we're not doing the right thing. And I came to Chanhassen and I got my line of work to try to do the right thing and try to improve our local water resources. And we're looking for a partner to do that. So with that, I really thank you for the opportunity to present and have this discussion, and open to answering any questions or listening to any feedback that Madam President, you or the board managers have.
Couple of things I'd like to interject before we get into those questions. When we talk about variance, we're really talking about variance on timing here. That's saying let's do less, or let's not get our water quality standards or quality metrics that we're going to get. It's really, there's going to be an interim phase where it won't be meeting the district standards because they will have done the reconstruction, but it will not have the stormwater BMP in place. But with that, I would like to reemphasize, we aren't adding new tributary to Lotus Lake that is not already being directed there under the current treatment conditions. So, and then the last thing is, if we, one of the things is, if you think about, there's 3 pools in there. We've talked about, will there be a way to even just go to a simple NERP type basin in one of those 3 pools? So we're not having Chanhassen create a new BMP that's not going to be there 2 years from now and have to go through all that expense, but would match with the grading that we're already proposing to do. And then finally, I would just like to say that, in an ideal world, we would have all these built, and then years later, a city project would come in. Unfortunately, we're just starting this process now. This new plan update, we've reached out to our cities and really tried to find ways that we can align our objectives. It is our hope that when we have the next 10-year plan, we'll have the conversations earlier with the cities so we can start aligning our capital projects to have these, but we're not there at this point. So that's kind of why we're having this conversation this way. And then I would also assume that you've already budgeted for your road projects, and within that is money budgeted for stormwater management. So it isn't as though, while it might not be a bond or a check in our hand, they have in their capital plan already budgeted for an expense associated with stormwater management.
That is correct.
Madam President.
Yes, Tom.
So just to follow up on what you said, do you guys have any comments on the project that we partnered with you with regard to the city, how that turned out?
I would say that
This was one from about a year ago, wasn't it? A year and a
Right.
half ago.
That's what he was talking about before.
Yeah,
But we-
I would say a couple of things. One is, it was really nice to sit down at the table with Chanhassen, be able to work towards a common goal and come up with something that while it may be a little bit painful at times to get through the process, it was good to know that the end result was going to be something better. And I think it's something we can build upon as we go through this agreement process, lessons learned of what did and did not work. I think as we come into more and more infill, we're going to need to be more and more creative in how we're going to do it. So I think the process, while it was our first time through it, and so at times it was a little sloppy, I think overall the end result was favorable to both entities.
Yeah, I would echo that statement from the city's perspective, is that, that it's difficult to work through something new, right? There's unforeseen challenges, but the little bit of flexibility that was provided allowed us to have a better solution. And that better solution allowed us to get an MPCA stormwater implementation grant. I think it was $1.1 million. That's a really big deal for us. I mean, and that helps pay for that improvement and allow us to do other big things here in Chanhassen. And we can only do those things if we've got if we got partners and because you were able to relax the rules in that situation.
Comments, question, yes.
Somebody else wants to go first.
I have a
that's fine.
question, just, well, I really like the idea of big projects, bigger good, regional projects. I totally think that's the way we need to go. I think that's a great thing. So you talked about like moving some of the flow from the ponds that are flooding. Is that a gravity system you can do that, or do you need to push it?
They worked it out where that would be a gravity system. I think it was the slide here.
Yeah, that's.
Yep. So we do, and I call it bucking grade. There's a high point in between them. So we have some deeper storm sewer in between those two systems, but the gravity does work in that situation.
And then you talked about bigging a bigger system, as big as we can, as big as you can, and that you would, use the credits and pay over time. Is there a known need for all of the credits kind of that you'd be designing in there? Or, you know what I mean? Or an estimate of, just so that we are planning appropriately and decide there's a need for that, whether it gets used or not by the city.
Yes, yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, so since we are still at the concept phase, we don't have actual numbers of what we would. I believe, I won't put words into our engineer's mouth. There is adequate watershed there to get more treatment than what we're even projecting for. So I think we'll be able to go well above and beyond what is there.
Just, so it still meets within our priority system of qualifying for what we spend our money on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. The other thing that Scott and I just talked about recently, and I think I sent an email to you, but maybe I didn't. So I'm just going to spring it on you now. There is the flood resilience grant available, and we're talking about putting on maybe some type of manipulatable weir between the cells. So hopefully not in our lifetimes will we ever need that flood storage, but we would be able to build that into this. So an added benefit that we could get from the project beyond the water quality and the rate control and the interaction with the public and the education portion of it.
I think that'd be, okay, that's a whole nother one, but that's sort of that smart technology. That's one of my presentations, I guess, from the thing is just how that can help with climate resilience and looking forward to flooding, especially being able to manage that. That would be a great one to have have some sort of a smart technology to deal with. That would be
It
amazing.
might even be dumb technology, analog. It might
Well,
even be something,
true.
right, but it might even be something as simple as just a weird.
Right. So immediately the algorithm is a person, not a program.
Madam President and managers, you might not know because you're newer to the board, when we came back here to give an overview of the downtown reuse system, the Civic Campus Market Boulevard
Mhm.
system, that is a smart technology. We are going to draw down ahead of rain events,
Good.
get that water out of there, get it treated and gone so that we can open up the pond for more storage. So that we're already doing that with the current project that we've partnered on. And there's opportunity for this one.
You had a question.
Yeah, no,
Comment.
another question, but that variance was a good variance because it was a timing thing more than anything, and there was a greater good that was going to come out of it. So it's like not one of those horrible variances where you got to compromise stuff you don't want to do. I guess for me, I'm really focused on the fact that we as urban areas are creating heat islands, and part of that is the water cycle. And the more that we can do infiltration and transpiration and keep that cycle going, the less we're sending downstream into the Gulf. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to move some of that into the next plan, and that will be part of whatever we try to come up with. So I guess that my question is more, are you trying to do the most we can for that kind of thing so that we have buffers or some kind of wetlands or something so that we're actually not just sending the water downstream? I know the other project, you're saving millions of gallons. That was just cool, to do the irrigation.
So right now, what you're seeing up here, Manager Crafton, all of this land that's in the, we'll call it brown color and green is mowed turf right now as it sits.
Okay.
And the final plan, everything that's the browner will be prairie. This will be more of your typical B-lawn type, something that people can
Something
walk
with
through and
roots
get to, but
though, yeah.
not typical turf management. So yes, we are incorporating it throughout the entire project.
Great.
Did you have any comments or questions?
No, I think my only comment is I like that the trail system is there. I don't want this hidden away in the corner where no one can see it. Just make sure it's part of a public education effort. So I like that. I'm big into that.
That's been your baby.
Huh?
That's been your baby.
That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes,
Okay.
Tom.
So I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but in the 2 days at the University of Minnesota Water Conference, this was the essence. This was the essence, in my opinion, of everything that was discussed. It was collaboration and putting together pieces that designed something that was better than each individual group putting a puzzle together that doesn't connect in the end. That's all.
Exactly. That's what the Midwest Climate Resiliency Conference was all about, was how to maximize through collaboration and partnerships.
This is the essence of what we should be doing. I mean, this should be a big component of how we figure out how to do things going forward. This is great.
Ourselves.
No, we
Also-
tried that.
Also, for the city of Chanhassen, I would say this would be a asset for the park to have an overlook and access to the lake. It's right now, it's not a park I have ever chosen to go to. I've biked by, but there's really nothing for me to go to that park for. You know, it's, so I think this would make it more of a destination, a place that you'd bring your family, spend some time, and you have a nice place to sit and actually look at the lake then, if you get that overlook high enough. And any place you can sit and look at a lake is a beautiful place. And I like more people to have access to that.
You got prairie, you're gonna have other things. You
We
have
don't really
birds
have a
and
good
pollinators.
place on Lotus Lake. There's only like 4 parking spots by the one park, and otherwise there isn't a place for you to go at a park and look at the lake if you don't live there,
That's great.
which
So I'd say in summation from what I'm hearing from everybody is, first of all, thank you very much that we're able to actually work with you rather than work as two entities that are completely separate. And whether or not the timing fits the date that things need to get to, I don't think that from what I'm hearing from any of the other managers or myself, that's really not the issue. Whereas we'd rather see a better, bigger project that actually can handle more. We know climate change is coming and Atlas 14 doesn't really apply to what we think is going to happen. You make it a bigger project where it can actually handle more and do more and show people exactly how things work. It's all a win-win as far as I'm concerned. So it takes a little bit longer. At least it's a better project in the long run. So am I summing that? I
Yep.
think we got all of that. So
Managers, what you're seeing here, Chaz, and what you're seeing here now is, so this would be sitting below the lookout at the bottom of the hill, looking north towards the tennis courts. So you can see the 3 basins in the darker green. Those would be their infiltration or filtration features, depending on what we find out there for geotech. Our preliminary MPD tests have been relatively positive, what we're finding for infiltration rates. And then, yeah, the trail network going through the trees. So there would be the art, depending on what we decide, right where the mouse is, would be one piece of art. Up by the tennis courts would be another piece of art. And then behind us in this image on top of the hill would be the lookout, another focal point there. And then we would work with the city, with the board, with others to decide if there's other elements we want to make. I mean, we'd like it to be something where you're brought into the park and then you're engaged and want to go and explore more and learn more about it as you go through the process. I don't think this is high enough, what they show in the red, but
I agree.
this would be the overlook looking out at the lake. I believe right now we show it being 10 to 12 feet in the plans. I think we're looking at 3 to 4 feet here, so it would be a higher rise shown there. This would be standing under the first piece of art looking south in the park. That's I think a more accurate depiction of what the topography would look like.
Again, we're thrilled.
Real
As,
good.
as are we.
So our next steps manager, we have draft term sheets together that Scott and I are reviewing, then we'll send over to Chan, asking for their comments on it. That will set the stage for putting the agreement together. We would like to, we'd like to come back at the December meeting. I believe you would like to be able to, when are you hoping to get your permit in? January, December?
They had their preliminary submittal, I think on Monday, but it was very preliminary. I think I mean, if we work backwards, we're looking at permitting this thing probably March,
Okay.
you know? So, but we'd like full plans. I would say December, January.
So that would either be with an agreement for you to look at, or at least a draft that's contingent upon adoption of. My plan is at our December meeting to present on the North Lotus Lake plan, period. Manager Nelson is going to join us at the open house that is being held 13th, not the 13th.
Thank
Okay. And then with that input, we'll finalize these. We were going to meet with the city, but the Parks Director had another commitment that came up, so we'll be meeting with the city shortly. I just sent out a new poll today to find a time to get their input on these renderings. So these are the first time the city's seeing these renderings right now. So we'll get their input, get your input at the December meeting. And then we would like to be able to order the project December, January, so that Mark could start the design, so we'd really understand what we're gonna get out there. Remember, just a reminder, ordering the project doesn't mean we're building the project, it just means you're ordering the design, the construction documents to be made. And we go out for bid with it, then you decide if you.
So you're still
favor
doing
this plan.
feasibility basis.
Then the city could also have a better understanding what the costs are associated with it. Yeah. From there, so. So we'll have to work out, if it's on a per cubic foot volume, per pound removed. How that actual payback will be, but I'm confident we can work through that.
Super. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here.
Just keep working your magic.
And hey, we still want the handouts from the new Civic because you did leave them.
Yep, left everything back.
Okay, we start working on our new property. I may be calling you up and saying I want a tour.
Would be happy to give you.
All right, great. Thank you.
So I'm gonna jump right into the next one, just on the interest time, unless people would like to get a bite to eat now, come back and have Kozar present. Maybe that would be best.
would be
I don't know what we got. Did we get something piping hot that's now good and happening?
So then we can eat during the rest of
Yes,
this.
go for it.
That would,
I am gonna get us going.
Okay.
I think you can eat while Kozar presents. I hope everyone had a chance to meet Kozar at our evening with the watershed. I met with Kozar a couple of times. I myself and Liz Forbes talk about things. So we have been talking, as we've done in this plan, about how do we look at a more systems-based approach? How do we look at a more holistic approach to watershed management? And we've also agreed that people are part of that system. We need to find ways to reach out to those communities that are not being represented within what we are doing. If we want to address the system, we need to address the whole system, everything that's around it. We had talked in the past about putting together a DEI plan, but I don't think a standalone plan really works. And we'd like something that is woven into our plan to really address the environmental justice and marginalization that we see throughout the district, and address it throughout all of our projects, programs, and initiatives that we have. So Ozar has experience with doing that. And she put together a presentation, which she reviewed with myself and Liz Ford. And I really liked what it had in it, and the approach that was going to be taken. So I have asked her to present that to the board tonight to get your questions and answers. Hopefully, that will satisfy. And then on the consent agenda for tonight is to approve the scope of Smith Partners to work with us to do this. Now, this is separate from the strategic planning that we're doing. The strategic planning that we're doing is really working with our partners at the city level and agency level to align planning as much as possible. This would be to work with other partners and stakeholders that as yet have not even been identified. Everybody has a relationship to water. How do we help that? How do we acknowledge that? So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kozar.
Gary. Well, good evening, Madam President, managers. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the watershed or evening with the watershed. It was a great learning opportunity for me to, first understand how your community is shaping up around water resiliency and engagement work, right? But also really understanding the core fabric and DNA that's driving folks to want to continue to engage and be committed as water stewards, regardless of what their entry point into the district and involvement looks like. So just to provide you a little bit of background on who I am, my name is Kosar Mohammed. I usually used to work in the economic development ecosystem, but have a background in environmental sciences. I worked for our capital city in planning and economic development, but particularly in corridor development and commercial development. I then transitioned into working across our nation in the heartlands of our nation. So think about Cleveland, Ohio, Akron. I've also had the opportunity to work in the Southern Atlantic, in Birmingham, Alabama, and other segments. Decided to come back home and return, and kind of had somewhat of a pandemic epiphany that I wanted to go back to school again, and decided to seek out a doctorate in natural resources science management with a emphasis and focus on water resource governance. For the last 5.5 years, I've also had the immense great opportunity to work with Smith Partners and Lewis Smith here as a strategic consultant on the public-private partnerships arm of their work, really around the built environment and how our anchor institutional partners working with community-based organizations and constituents to really strengthen their civic stewardship opportunities, whether that is raising funding and resources for new green space, or if that looks like creating more affordable housing or workforce development opportunities. So really here, what's bringing me today is a twofold, right? It's the element of knowing that we in Minnesota are really fortunate and privileged in our current context that we are a water resource rich state, right? And what we're also coming to find from not only just a regional, national, and global scale is that folks are taking for granted how water resource rich we are as a state and as a region, right? There hasn't been as forefront emphasis on what does it look like for those who are privileged enough to have access to think about water stewardship and water civics, and also those who maybe been left at the fringes and really siloed out just due to the fact that our Western ways of knowing is oftentimes really individualistic in design. And oftentimes it's not as collective or as collaborative as we would see it, right? And so my hope for you all tonight is really to provide you a high level, but also deep understanding of what would reimagining resilience for this particular watershed look like? And what would it look like really thinking about the communities that we're starting to see calling this district home, seeing it as a place that they work, play, pray, and live in. And so I'm just going to start with, at a very high level, what I feel like I not only, oh, yes.
It's not on the screen.
Oh, it isn't?
Just a delay.
Seriously, I see it.
Yeah, let's try this one. I think there is a little lag there. just have to be really patient with it. Okay. So just really based off of what I've heard from early conversations with Liz and Terry, right? Starting at that first foundational level, and also really what I heard during the evening with the watershed conversations that you all were having just around what has been accomplished in the last several years, right? What's been done in the last decade. I think it's really critical that we're not recreating the wheel when we think about water resilient communities or engagement, but really starting from the baseline of where you all are at and then building improvements around that. So from a really high level understanding is that this is a particular district that already has a very unique fabric and DNA, right? There are water stewards that exist. There is deep interest to move from gray matter infrastructure to more whole water systems, right? So thinking about the water cycle as a part of engineering systems, thinking about what does it look like to have more green oriented development. And really from there, what does it look like to bring in communities who maybe haven't had that level of awareness, entry point, or education into how to engage or get involved. And so really for me, what came to mind is what does it look like for this district to, from a resilient standpoint, move from a solely infrastructure-based resilience strategy to more of a community-anchored resilience strategy, right? What does it look like to have train the trainer models? What does it look like for folks who not only are lakeshore property owners, but those who maybe live in different housing markets, right? Who have different access points to our fresh waters. What are their ways of engaging with our waterways and water systems? And what are the practices and values and propositions that they have around the water that's around them? And what does it look like for them to engage with the services and the offerings of the district, but also what could they offer to the district around enrichment and learning opportunities and exposure from their own community standpoint? And really, ultimately, what I see as the goal of this particular work that we are hoping to engage with you all on is to make water more visible, right? To create more awareness around the waterways and the watershed as it currently is oriented, but also make sure that there is some deep value and collective value that is raised up for folks to really have some deep sentiments around and then really be able to see how they can be a part of your overall larger ecosystem. What I think is really critical anytime I engage in projects with municipalities or state partners or other folks in the public sector is to really start with the data. It's really critical to understand that when you're trying to solve for a particular situation or segment, that you understand the landscape that you're living within. And so here you'll see a map, and I know you all are a little bit outside of just the Hennepin County maps as well, but I just wanted to be situated currently in this context around Hennepin County and what we're seeing in Hennepin County. This is a map that was provided by Hennepin County in 2020 on the left segment that shows what is the population of folks of color who identify as people of color demographic wise in Hennepin County. You will see in particular in segments of Eden Prairie and segments of Bloomington, there is a significantly growing population of folks who identify as Black, Brown, Indigenous, or maybe immigrants. We're also seeing in a map that was provided by the Mapping Prejudice Project at the University of Minnesota, that there's also some overlap and some layering of racial covenants that have existed, right? So there is some level of injustices that may have occurred as it relates to the built environment. But what we also know is happening in our current day-to-day is that there is a large population of folks of color, and particularly large families, who are coming to move to the Southwest Metro of the state. And so that is something that I think we all, as folks who work in the public sector, interface with the public sector, have to be aware of as we think about programs and services and engagement protocols and practices. That if there are programs and services that exist, that there should be an element of access and opportunity to these communities, and at least that first level of awareness so that they know that there is a there. And so this goes even more deeper. You'll see those dark mahogany maroon colors that is from the American Community Survey. Their 1-year data looking at areas of poverty and concentrated poverty. The way that they define that is families of 4 below $32,000 a year. And you will see that there are significant communities within the watershed boundaries in that more lighter whitish gray color that are living in states of poverty, right? And some of them might be single family homeowners. They might be living in larger units in apartment buildings, but there is a critical note of need there. And you will see that it's smack dab in where the Purgatory Creek area is, where there has been a lot of investments by the district, but has there been the dedicated engagement to really understand, what have been the water perceptions, values, also experiences of this community, right? I think there is a really ripe opportunity to go deeper around what we're seeing from economic data and demographic data on top of what we're seeing from our natural and built environment there. And so what's really most critical for me around making water more visible and making this district more visible for folks' awareness and engagement is really around grounding around shared practice and shared understanding, that we're not trying to boil the ocean with this particular project, right? While still understanding and acknowledging that all communities that reside, work, and play in this district should be engaged, but that there is a critical need in communities that haven't been historically engaged, and communities that are also maybe dealing with a stack of challenges, right, with economic, social, and access point challenges to what water access looks like. And so really segments of Eden Prairie and Bloomington will probably be our first starting point of engagement, really where there's some hub and spoke spots, but also where we're seeing communities of color maybe dealing with drowning incidents, right? That's been something that's been a rise in this particular district and other watersheds, just really due to the awareness and education element as well. And so what I wanted to really lift for us tonight is really in the place of shared understanding. What does it look like to deepen impact? How does this work not just become siloed, right? I think to Terry's point earlier and what we've shared with Liz and, we've learned from Liz and Terry in these conversations have really been around, we don't see the work of social impact or the work with working with community to be siloed or to be a one-off. It should be really woven into the fabric and the DNA of the work that you're already doing, right? To really pair it up with services and programs that pre-exist and to strengthen those in a way that would allow for greater resiliency and infrastructure investments, right? There is a huge interest and need in our region to see communities of this orientation going beyond their traditional demographics, going beyond their traditional services. And ultimately, why I see this is that if you have communities that aren't aware of the services or opportunities or how to really serve as water stewards, you then will down the line will deal with larger investment challenges, right? There's going to be probably be lack of investment, lack of care, maybe potentially for these areas, or a mismatch of engagement in these segments. And so what I really see this as is an opportunity to not only listen, but also to test and hypothesize and maybe interrogate some elements, right? But also really to document, right? And have some repository of what we're hearing and seeing across this landscape. And so we see it as a 4-point strategy around moving folks from having early perceptions around what communities may be seeing, feeling, or experiencing to having some level of shared understanding and grounding, building trust and building bridges with maybe areas that are already hub and spoke models, right? Building those relationships for the district, and then having the ability to move towards action on shared initiatives, shared efforts, branding, whatever it may be, but really to widen the pool of what you all would consider water stewards a part of your network and community. And so how we see this is really by thinking through a more resilient water future strategy. It's really around measuring and honoring what local water values look like in these segmented communities, surfacing these learning opportunities and sharing them with you all as managers and as members of staff, right? I think for us, it's really to have a train the trainer model and really work closely with Terry, Liz, Dylan, and other folks across, the organization around what does it look like to build up their utilities and their toolbox to engage more deeply, right? And then from there, thinking about how do we activate place-based relationships, right? Folks who can continue to partner with the district so the district isn't really having to carry the capacity load by themselves, but that you have trusted partners across the district to be able to raise awareness around flooding events, to raise awareness around infrastructure projects that are coming in. But really, even as you have folks from Chanhassen today, right? They're going to have to engage their community. You're going to have to engage your community. But if you already have the pre-identified community-based organizations and anchor areas, it's a lot easier of a resolve than having folks having to always come here, right? You can go to community and where they're at. And really from there, an opportunity to explore expanded development of adaptive programs, right? You all are already doing really amazing work from the technical standpoint and what we consider the life sciences, right? And the natural sciences. But what does it look like to see those adaptive programs be expanded, right? How do we utilize storytelling and arts more deeply and branding around the work that you're all doing? So much like what we had shared in our scope of work that was shared with you all prior to tonight's convening, we're going to be utilizing this four step-by-step phases really around engaging in this work. For me, it's really critical to just start with a landscape analysis and insight briefs, understanding the data, understanding the demographics, understanding the community that we're doing this work in. I think we have a really good micro understanding of that, but I think it's an opportunity to go even deeper. And so that looks like not only just having conversations and having one-on-one opportunities built in with folks, but it's also conducting surveys, but also building off the existing surveys that have already been administered, right? So we're not trying to recreate the wheel, but really to build out the database for the organization to be stronger with the data that they have on hand. Really having facilitated reflective sessions, right? Inviting folks to the district to have some conversations, going to them and where they're located to have some early conversations, and then offering an opportunity with the managers here today to have some learning opportunities and what I would consider more of a workshop, right? Around what we're learning, what we're seeing, what does it mean for the future of the district, and then really how you all may choose to engage with that. So I know I talk fast and that was a really rapid fire presentation, but I will pause this for any questions, thought, feedback, and whatever's coming to mind for folks.
I have to say that I'm like thrilled to see this. 4 years ago, Jill and I sat and thought about DEI when it came to our personnel handbook. And one of the things I said at that time was, there's such a thing as doing, let's just stick this in our personnel manual and give it lip service. You can't really do that and have it really mean anything and produce anything that's worth value. So the fact that we're actually going to have more of an in-depth look and try to figure out how to reach those communities, what we can do, what would benefit them and us, it thrills me to actually see this. It means something that we can actually build on.
For me, it's premature, but go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say that the notion of place-based relationships, I think, is critical. I think that's something that I follow a lot of different politics at the national level, and they say that that's something that one party has figured out how to do and one hasn't. And that's to understand and determine and figure out what place-based relationships are and how do we deal with that. This seems like it's right on. And it's happening right at a unique time in what's going on in the country, what's going on in the city, what's going on with our planning cycle.
So there's many layers. From my role as a manager, I go back to what is our purpose as a watershed district, first of all, and then how does this help inform what we do? But within, starting with our core, what is our purpose and water quality, flooding, and recreation, but so the people are part of it, but I just want to make sure that we're informing maybe on our projects. I don't know if this is, and how this is going to be used. I want to make sure it makes sense with our purpose as a watershed district.
Manager,
Yeah, I don't know how to.
No, I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that. I think what I've seen in other first ring, second ring suburbs across our region, at least within the 7-county metro that I've worked with in the past, is that when you have areas of concentrated poverty or some elements of lack of access to resources, there usually is another surface level issue, which is there is probably surface temperature rising in those communities at a larger level. There's probably lack of tree canopies. There's also probably flood mitigation issues that are occurring there. And so a lot of things begin to uncover and unravel themselves as you engage with those communities, right? I don't want to alert you all and say that, you know, that's what's occurring right now. I'm not entirely sure, right? Until we go into those communities and learn. But what I've come to find is that usually the early data does oftentimes then later indicate that there's probably larger issues that are occurring that would probably feed into the programs and services that you all provide. And so that's what I really hope that we can uncover with this work, is that we can understand what is folks' not only their perceptions and values of water, but what are the challenges that they're having with both the natural and the built environment as it relates to water resiliency.
So I'm trying to understand like where this comes. Are we looking at what projects need to be done? Or are we going out and trying?
We're engaging. You're engaging a segment of the population as the heretofore not been engaged, not been at the table, not participating in. You know, if we think about environmental justice issues, where we have the most gray space, where we have the fewest trees, it's going to be in those areas that are least marginalized. When I was at the Midwest Climate Resiliency Conference, one of the most interesting presentations I saw was the simplest one. It was a group of community activists who lived in the Heat Island in the Milwaukee area, and they wanted trees. But what they're running into is the people who live there had a negative reaction to trees. They were dirty, or their branches fell, or they're unsafe, or their kids were going to climb and fall and break their legs. So they addressed that by take an RFQ for a tree care agency, tree management care agency to actually come in and do it. And then they went and leveraged funds from the PCA for stormwater management, because there weren't funds available just for greenscaping the area. And so they added a stormwater management, a flood abatement measure into it. And then they now have this wonderful program where community of color and concentrated poverty now have access to green space that they didn't have before. And the city of Milwaukee gets the benefit for their stormwater management of the canopy coverage. So Elaine Wentworth, who is Team Vogue editor, has a phase, and other people have said it differently, but it's if you can't see, it's on my wall. If you can't see how you're part of the problem, you can't see how you can be part of the solution. And so for me, it's really about finding out, what are we missing? What aren't we doing? What aren't we taking care of? Who aren't we serving? We hear from the same people over and over again, and they come in with great ideas, and they're really good champions for us, but we're missing out on the segment, and we don't even know what we're missing out on. So I see it being incorporated into all we do, all of our policies, projects, programs, you know, the entire gamut.
Yes.
I think this is really premature. My city of Bloomington, I've got some newsletters here. I mean, they're doing things like creative place. They've been pretty diversified, and we've been reaching out and including people for a long time. So I think that Liz and Terry don't interact with people in the communities within the district. And so I don't know that they're totally aware of what's going on out there. I would like to see you do this presentation, inviting the city staff to run it by them, because I think they're doing a ton of stuff. I know we are in Bloomington, and even within the county, when they did their master plan, there were so many comments about what they value in terms of natural resources that they did a natural resource plan. Minnetonka's done a natural resource plan. Bloomington's done one, and they're reaching out. In Minnetonka, we got Friends of the Park, so people are showing up for 10 parks, taking out buckthorn and things and bringing in native plants. I mean, there's a huge, the stuff I get out of Minnetonka, Resilient Minnetonka, Christine Peterson's doing an amazing job of highlighting the wetlands. I think they already have a lot of engagement with the people in their communities around natural resource. So that's why I think this is premature. I would want to see it presented to those cities to see what they think, what their reaction would be, how we could collaborate. I mean, you talked about collaboration. I think this is, in some ways, it's almost insulting just to say we're going to do this when we really haven't engaged. I think we need to bring them to the table before we decide to go ahead with something like this, to find out what they're doing, how they could see themselves working with this. I'm not ready to vote for this at this point without that engagement to get that feedback.
Yeah, I think I agree somewhat. I mean, I think the cities have a lot of this background demographic information. They all have departments that work with the underserved communities on, economic issues, nutrition issues, helping them find work, that type of thing. But I don't know, I know in our department how much they actually work with the side that looks at the environment, water resources, the importance of our ecosystem. That I think is more a piece that could be very well missing. You even talk about buckthorn, but when you look at how many people from the community actually go to those events, it's a pretty small number, small percentage. And by doing something like this, we can reach people that normally aren't reached in those traditional outlets that people go to engage the public. So I don't think it's totally too soon. I think you're going to find more information than you realize by reaching out to the cities. But I'm for starting that process. I guess my main concern is timing. We're working on a watershed plan, and I would like to see the results of this incorporated into our watershed plan. And I'm just worried that how well they're going to mesh with the timing.
In the packet for this, there is a presentation, but then there was also the actual proposal that has the 3 phases, and those 3 phases are actually intended to align with our planning process.
Yeah, we were working to be as thoughtful about that because we didn't want to, delay the results or, the engagement and what we were collecting. And, Manager Jill, I want to be thoughtful about, what you had shared, right? And for me, I have a lot of good friends across these municipalities. And what I do know is that there's been a lot of turnover in the areas where engagement occurs in some of these cities, right? And so I want to honor and recognize that too, and that there is some level of institutional drainage that's happening across the 7-county metro. And so I think there is an opportunity to lean in on our institutional partners, and knowing that there's been a lot of folks who've been leading this work that have ended up in different segments in different areas across some of these cities that we're speaking to.
So to follow up on Jill's feeling about the fact we need to engage our city partners more, do you have a recommendation, an idea about how you could adjust what it is that you'll be doing for us to include that portion of it?
Oh, absolutely. So if there is a desire and interest to build deeper relationships with the staff who lead segmented programs and services, they would be a part of our landscape analysis. They would be a part of the outreach that's being done to really understand, are there other hub and spoke areas that they're aware of that we're not capturing, right? What programs and services are they utilizing? Do they see the ways that, federal investments have shifted in the last couple of months, impacting engagement and investment in their particular geography? And what does it look like to cross-pollinate ideas, right? I think the biggest piece for us is we don't have to recreate the wheel, right? We can start with what already exists, but you have to ask folks about what programs, what services even exist anymore, right? You go on the EPA website, half the sites are gone. And those are the sites that the MPCA and many other city municipalities and counties were relying on for their environmental data and their ecological data, right? And so a lot of folks are really being scrappy and nimble about it, where they're using GitHub and other different open source resources and developing their own data pools, right? But yeah, so early conversations absolutely can be added and really identify that we were going to connect with county, city, and state folks like Bowser and DNR and MPCA around this.
Does that answer some of your question?
I'm still not there.
Could I comment about that too? I said, I think it's really very important that we reach out to the cities because a lot of these communities are a little isolated and they're not going to want to talk to a stranger walking in and say, let's talk about water. They're just, that we need to get these familiar faces on board to work with us, to reach out to those communities, because otherwise it's just not going to work. I can't see it working if we don't do that. So yeah, I think the upfront, having part of that landscape analysis really needs to be meeting with the cities, seeing how they can help us reach out to those communities, because we can't, I don't think we can successfully do it on our own.
I'd like the conversation to be with the cities before we vote on this and decide and see how that, what they might want to shape. Now, maybe other communities that doesn't work, but Bloomington's been pretty progressive.
See,
I think they would be excited about,
I think they would be.
yeah, I don't see that.
I'd like
that
to
would be fair.
see that happen and get their input before I'm ready to
Yeah. I know.
vote on putting an investment into it. I mean, I'm not totally against the concept at all. I just don't see. I see in Bloomington, people are doing a lot. So I would like that feedback. I would like their input on this before going forward.
That's part of the.
That's part of
first
what
step.
you would do, right?
The first
That's
step
the
is
first
reaching
part.
out to the other communities and seeing what they have.
Yes, Liz.
I just, one other thing we haven't talked about, but we did talk extensively with Terry and Liz about is COSAR's relationships with tribal liaisons
Mhm.
and the Spring Road property vision
Yep.
and that being a part of this landscape also as tribal communities.
Yes. that'd be very-
See, I'm really interested.
Terrific.
I'm really interested in that too. So I've just gotten bugging the Bowser people about it. So they put together the traditional ecological knowledge. There's some work on that, and I forwarded you that thing. But the differences in how we operate and how Western science versus what indigenous. I've been to 2 tribal state relations trainings. I want to try and go to another one with Hinkley with the Mille-Lacs tribe, the Ojibwe. So I'm totally into all of that. I've been reading a lot of stuff on. So yeah, there is that. I mean, we haven't even gotten over to the cultural center. We were going to do that, and we just keep putting stuff off. We never get things done. But I get that, Louis. But I think before we go down this path, I really want to hear from the cities to see whether there's commitment from that end first and where they are. And then if that's not there, then figure out how we want to go ahead.
See, the way I read this proposal is I kind of foresee that that's all part of the first step of the proposal. We've got to first develop a database of what's there, what's happening, who's doing it now. And then before you even think about how you're going to work with it, you got to have all the knowledge. That's how I see this proposal.
I guess I see this as a feasibility deal. I'd like this first part before we go on to the next.
But how do we do that?
Call up your city and talk to people.
You or I, or who does that?
I mean, that's.
I would
what
think
the-
staff would
That's
do that.
what she would be doing
That's
for
what
us.
she would be doing for
Right.
us.
That's what she's doing for us.
Okay, well,
We have been communicating with cities, we've been communicating with Eden Prairie, that's where the tree sale, where the tree giveaway is coming from. I think it's also important to note that people are also afraid of cities. It's not that everybody's going and talking to cities, they represent something to them. They're the people that tax them. They're the people that don't come and plow the roads. They're the people that don't plant trees or put parks in their neighborhood. So cities will definitely be a source and a partnership in this, but I think unless we have a plan of how we are going to move forward, we won't.
Yes.
See, in Bloomington, we did bonding, and so we're, 9 Mile Creek is doing that whole corridor that they're developing. They voted to redo the community center, so that's huge, and they're making that for more outreach. One other thing I can't remember. But there was, oh, they've got this place, creative place, having a place that they've been developing for 2 or 3 years now. Went to the first meeting on that. So there's stuff already happening. So for me, this is more than compiling a database. This is about reaching out and talking to people and developing a relationship. And I guess I wanted to see that relationship developed a little bit first.
Kosar, just a question for you about other watershed districts. I'm assuming that not many of them are very far along in a process like this, are they? Or one of the first the first groups that have really thought about doing this, right?
Absolutely. There's
Mississippi,
some that are,
WMO is.
Capital region.
Maybe a little?
There
Cap
are
region?
several that are doing this.
That was
not as deeply. Oh,
Yeah. And I just really feel strongly that we've got to start somewhere.
Yep.
We've not done anything.
So this feels like our earlier presentation again, where we're trying to lay out partnerships, and the partnerships cover many different facets of relationships that we have with them. So in my study of other watershed districts and cities here to see how we connect, I think you can go into any given city and see components of what we do, say from a water point of view, but there's nothing that goes across the spectrum. And then you layer onto that the staff that the cities have, and a lot of times they might have an idea and it's in their documents, but they have no way to implement what's going on. So it seems like we're in a position to be a catalyst for all kinds of activities, water being the focus. But part of it, I think, relates to what Manager Crafton is saying, is that we need, I think, a big input from the cities, because that's who our primary focus is in dealing with watershed issues. So again, it's kind of a chicken and egg question, and the fact that we can recognize a problem and potential ways to start connecting the dots, it seems like we're in a position to maybe do that. And this is another component of what we're trying to do with the city of Chanhassen, which is what I think we have to do with everybody that we deal with on a go-forward basis. So it feels like it might be the cart in front of the horse, but it's got to start somewhere. And again, I think the cities are doing components of it, and it varies from city to city. Just like our watershed staff, we've got a limited staff, more limited today than it was a few months ago. And so we can't be all things to all people. So I think from my perspective, we have to pick out strategic partnerships with resources that we don't have, that we seek, connecting the dots. So it seems like the engagement with the cities is something we have to do early on, to see where they stand and see how it fits in with these things, and then collaborate. Again, that's going to be the name of the game going forward, as far as I can see.
Jerry, could you set up a deal where Kosar could come and present to the cities? Tell them we're thinking about doing this. This is something, so that invite the city people to come.
Yeah, I could work with Kozar on that, certainly.
I would like to see you do that next, and then get their feedback,
I think that
and then go forward. But I would definitely like to see you have her do the presentation to them.
I just want to speak up and say, I'm not willing to do that. I don't think it's fair to Kosar to ask her to continue to do work without some kind of commitment.
Right,
No, I
So-
think we're
right.
pretty excited about this and want it to go forward.
Yeah.
I
That's
kind
part
of
the work.
foresee all of this as being the first part of
First
what
step.
you're recommending that we do.
And we
That-
wouldn't be working in silo, right, Madam President and Manager Crafton, right? We would be working in partnership with the organization and building a team around this, right?
Right.
Because again, what we want to ensure is that they have the resources, the tools, the relationships built in so that the capacity is built in-house, right? And that there isn't this cyclical process. And so, yeah, that's just how I see it to be a cross-pollinating
And
opportunity.
just showcase these wonderful opportunities to community. They may not be aware that they're there, that they're free, that they can go there,
Exactly.
how to get there. I mean, that's gonna be part of it too, is like, okay, I live over here. How can I get to that park? You know, there's a lot of pieces in here, I'm sure that'll come up as we go along.
But at this point, I just feel like we don't even know.
We don't even know.
I have a question about how, like, the scope. I couldn't find the document that was referenced, so I really don't understand the scope of this, if how open-ended it is, what it's gonna cost. That concerns me.
Oh, it was in the,
It was all in the
SharePoint. I
board
couldn't
packet.
Find the document it. That's
Oh.
part of but it's is this going to inform how we choose which projects we work on? Is it part of our scoring system?
It may well fall
That's
into that.
good
But
question.
I mean, if it's not, or if it's a little, then it feels like it's more of a education input as we pick projects that we would do this work versus doing it in areas where we might not be working on a project.
That's how we'd have to see how it fits in. So that,
Right,
that's,
so it's like we're looking for more work when we have limited resources, so I'm not understanding how this is going to inform our work as a watershed district and the projects we do, other than the education and outreach, absolutely.
and I don't mean this to sound flippant, exactly. We don't understand how it will inform our work. We don't understand what opportunities we're missing. I work from my bubble. I look at data. Where are we seeing escarpments? Where are we seeing erosion? And then we focus on that spot. But maybe we find that upstream of it is an underserved area that we could get some flood storage in, and we could get some rate control, and we could also provide green space and provide heat island impact or heat island mitigation effects and other things. So maybe it ends up being that, or maybe it's a smaller community park like what we're doing in North Lotus Lake Park, where it's just there. It's just a green postage stamp. And now we have identified it as, oh, well, that's a place where we could accomplish X, Y, and Z that we're already looking to do. So that's where I see it being, it being incorporated in our plans. I don't see us saying, oh, that's it. We're going to take all of our funds and we're going to shift it over to the Eden Prairie Mall area and do that. I see it as helping us inform our decisions that we make, of what projects we're going to do, or what education outreach we're going to do, or what stewardship grants we're going to do.
But that sort of is what she said, that we're gonna start with those areas, work on those areas.
So, and that-
The Eden Prairie Mall area. I mean, that is basically, I
That's-
thought what you said we were going to do.
That's the areas we will look at. That doesn't mean that's where we'll take all our funds and move it to.
I understand, but it's,
We know that that's where
right.
the underrepresented, so that's where we will be looking at how are we not serving those areas? How is that better?
Guess the other thing too for me was, is there such a structure built into this that it can't be changed? That it can't be flexible? Into the agreement that we're signing and we're gonna pay for?
Well, that's why I asked, will you in fact reach out to the cities in that first section of it? Because it is a fairly general document. When you read through it, there's a lot that could really be changed and moved around
Right.
between one section and the next. So I do think it's,
Concerned about.
yeah, I do think that there's more flexibility than, what you might think.
Bloomington's just little, so you guys, whatever you want. I think I will just abstain and you guys can go for it.
I have a couple of friends in the indigenous community, and when I have talked to them about water resources and what they use in our lakes and streams and the parks, many times what I hear is, well, we're just getting called in to give y'all a 20-minute chat or a 1 hour symposium, and you're not really interested in what we're saying and what we can help you with. And I think they get a little tired of being sort of that, here, let's just call them up and fit them into our whatever resource for the day. I don't think that's how we make change.
Because we don't, see things through an animate world, and we're about inanimate. We can't even talk in the same language. So how do we bring an experiential factor into what we're doing? It's not how we operate.
That's where I'd say, at least she's got way more experience at this than I do, from what I can see.
That was a big focus at the Midwest Climate Resiliency Conference, is that we come to them and tell them to partner with us on our project.
Uh-huh.
Opposed to we help you.
The other thing,
That's not happening at the state level anymore, I can tell you.
I think a lot about where the location of our new office is going to be eventually. And I think it's right next to the spring, which was used by much of the indigenous community through how many hundreds of years, and how that could be an environment or an educational resource, a spot where community can come together there and use it and be part of everything that we do. And I just feel like it's such a terrific opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of emerging opportunities here in Minnesota around what does co-management practices look like with tribal nations and public entities. For example, there is the Wakan Teepee project that's happening in St. Paul near the Dayton Bluff area, where indigenous populations there have been able to really re-indigenize that space and are building a multi-million-dollar center, right? Community education center. It's going to be a hub. And so what we've had as early, I think, just exploratory conversations is how do you introduce this 27-acre site, right, that the district will be owning and maintaining and building, but also what is, interest of tribal partners to co-partner, co-steward that space with you all, right? As you think about BMPs, what would BMPs on that site look like from a placekeeping and placemaking strategy, right? Where folks can come to this particular space, not only be educated and aware, but also is there a sacred offerings that are offered on this site, whatever it may be. I think there's a lot to explore around just learning together throughout that experience.
I already talked to Scott Walls over there.
Mhm.
For living right after I'd been to the Shakopee Midwestern and Sioux training. And I was hoping that we were going to go and see the cultural center. And I said, do you think we could get one of the tribal elders to come? And he said, definitely he would look into trying to arrange that. But then it just fell through because staff didn't follow through on that. So been trying to bridge out and talk to people.
Any other questions or comments from everybody? Do you need to see the actual proposal?
Probably vote no.
Okay. Do you want to see the proposal just so that you know what's there and what the costs are? And
Workshop, under the workshop item on the website.
Yeah, it should.
Been there the whole time.
Well,
If not, I have it on my computer. I don't have it logged in, but I could email it real quick.
why didn't you go ahead and do that? Just so that she has the clear idea of what's. Oh, you have a paper copy?
Yeah,
Okay,
there you
good,
go.
good.
Yeah, do that.
Thank you, Dylan. Any other questions or comments that you might have?
I think the only comment I would note here is that ultimately it's to see it as a multi-pronged approach, right? It's to have the public element, there's the private element, and then there's the civic element, right? It's really to see it from a multi-layered perspective. It's recognizing that you all do have really great technical investments and technical programs and services already existing, but there is an element where a lot of your work does feel very homogeneous, right? You can look in the space when you've had your evening with the watershed. There is a lot of populations and communities who live, work, and play in your watershed who are not aware of its existence. point blank period. And so I think we're going to have to get really comfortable with the fact that demographics are shifting across our state. And it's going to be really critical in order for this watershed to thrive in the next 7 generations plus, to really bring all of those communities to the fold who really are being impacted at an adverse way around our systems and how they're structured, right? And so I really hope that we can engage in this work with you all, but I also know that this is not going to be maybe the last time I engage with you all in this way. There's probably going to be other opportunities, but Minnesota is becoming really a melting pot and a nexus point across our continent for investment around great infrastructure, and it is depleting our water resources really quickly. And so just something to think about as you think about awareness, education, and bringing more stewards into the conversation. So we're making educated decisions together.
No, I'm totally behind that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, we have 10 minutes before our board meeting. You have one more comment or something?
No, I was just saying hi to Jeff.
Oh, 10 minutes before our board meeting starts. So little break so everybody can stand up, do what they would like to do.